Welcome everybody to RCI TV, here for our festivities of Bathurst 12-hour, kicking off on the stream today. Of course, pre-qualifying races happened yesterday to sort all of our teams out into their respective classes. Joining you here today will be myself, Mike Jones, Nick Setnick, bringing you all the cameras, and a man I do not get to commentate with that much, as it turns out, Mr. Ryan Gill, here for the Server 1 of Bathurst race qualifying. Should push to session here in a moment. These guys get 30 minutes of qualifying time, and then we will provide a 10-person Superpole to round that out. It is 2 weeks from the main event. Of course, the main event happening on October 17th, and I don't know about you, Mr. Gill, but I am excited watching Darren King for the Fordzilla Merc race around the track here.
Well, Mike, it's definitely going to be the most exciting endurance race I've had the pleasure of commentating on, and I don't mind saying that after having commentated on things like the Barcelona 6-hour, the Suzuka 12-hour, 3 hours as older. I've commentated on a few different endurance races, but yeah, I mean, the names that we have lined up here for this top split, the Pro and the Pro-Am server, absolutely incredible. We have esports drivers, lots of influencers in here as well, and of course plenty of familiar names throughout the top of ACC, names that you'll know throughout all the different communities. And like you said, qualifying getting underway in just a few minutes. I cannot wait, and I still can't believe that the race is 2 weeks away.
2 weeks. I mean, it just doesn't feel like it should be. It feels like we've put so much work into this already that I'm ready for it to be here. However, you know, this is the first weekend. Like I said, pre-qualifying races happened yesterday. Obviously, those were not streamed as they were just qualifying races, but 3 of those happened. We had our pro race to break the teams into their pro and pro-am for this server here that we're looking at. We had our silver and am race. I participated in that one myself, running a stint for my Seals on Wheels team. Currently, my teammate Tony Benetat qualifying for us, getting ready to do that over on the other qualifying server. But here on this server, Darren King, Joe McCooley, Justin Hartkemper, who was one of our podium winners at Barcelona 6-hour. We've got Harry Conway here for the Triple R, that brought to you by Billy Octane, and I believe Ryan, I've lost track of their team already. They've changed members so often, but they've got a whole bunch of them in that team, if I'm not mistaken. Samir Ibrahimi, James Parker for the 449 Bentley, currently in 16th place here so far in the practice session. Lubomir Zeman, Dedek back there in the 19th place as people are taking out some of the signs here, and there goes Conway off the track. These guys pushing to the absolute limit here and spinning themselves. We've got White Rabbit Gaming featured here as well from the South African community, the 888 Bentley, currently Bruno Cadili in that car. Here's Brandon Abraham for the 999 as well. This split is just stacked, and we should be getting into qualifying here very shortly. Anything you're looking forward to, Mr. Setnick?
Honestly, just as someone who just likes to run the cameras, I mean, there are, as been mentioned, huge names around here, especially for RCI and the other racing communities. You know, just these teams are absolutely stacked. I mean, when you're looking at these 2 splits, you know, you're seeing a lot of names that everybody can recognize at this point. If you've watched any race here at RCI for the last few seasons that have been wrapping up, you have podium finishers and everybody that's been doing really well for themselves and really putting their names out there for their own communities, for their own followers. And it's just going to make for a very exciting 12 hours of racing that I am looking forward to as a broadcaster, to continue bringing all these cool camera angles. And then we're actually going to be jumping over to the main event, the secondary main event for the day, where we will be qualifying for these teams and see where they stack up.
And it should be interesting. We're going to see who decides they are brave enough to get out in front and go down the mountain for the first time. Looks like we got a Ferrari that's going to go out first. I believe that is the Ferrari of of is that? Oh God, here we go. Jesse's not even here, Ryan. I'm gonna have to depend on you for the names today because me and Jesse aren't here to butcher everything. This is the 501 Ferrari of Ryan Gill.
Uh, so don't worry, Mike. I've got you completely covered on this one. I definitely will not butcher it. This is the likes of Matthias Kazchek, and he's driving for the Forza Italia PL esports team. And the 501 Ferrari, of course, a lot of the Italian drivers that we do see around here tend to drive Italian cars. Makes a lot of sense. But the first car actually out on track that should be coming around to set a valid lap, I believe, is Lubomir Siemens 21 Audi of the Multi-21 Racing. And there you can see them on screen at the moment. That lovely white, red, and black finish. And, of course, this is a car that, well, a car and team that we are very, very familiar with. Of course, they've raced in endurance races with us before, and of course, quite popular within our league races as well. So these are guys that we're pretty familiar with, and, you know, judging by what we've seen of them in the past, I'm not going to be surprised today if they end up in the top half of qualifying, and we have a lot of talent here today. Let's not put that aside. But I think these guys might be one of the few teams that are a bit of a dark horse and could get into Superpole if a few guys struggle out there today.
They could struggle out here today, and Zeman, even though they're racing for the Pro-Am division in here, we know that Zeman is one quick racer. That Multi-21 racing team is very quick. Couple other notables here from the Silver Split. We have Gergo Panker, of course, for the Kunos Racing Dev team in the 778 V12 Aston, joined by Eris, who, of course, everybody knows Eris, and one of our SRO pro drivers / British drift champion, Matt Samuel, joining them in that 778 V12. I believe they might be adding a fourth driver to their roster as well. That was hinted to me just moments ago, in fact, that they might be adding in a fourth driver to that roster, as one of the teams did have to drop out due to some scheduling problems. But here they are right here, the R Motorsports Aston V12. And of course, we've got the likes of like Stefan Zero, Joe McCooley out here racing for the Pro Split. These guys are going to, I think, slap down an absolute blazing qualifying time. And they've got 30 minutes to do it. That's the thing. A lot of qualifying sessions that we like to do here at RCI, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes at the most. Give these drivers just a few minutes to throw down some laps. But here for this 12 hours of Bathurst, 30 minutes of qualifying. This allows them so much time. If you can continuously run laps, you've got time for about 15 laps if you really wanted to. I'm assuming these guys are going to go back to the pits, get some fresh tires and some fuel here and there. More likely to run maybe 10 laps at the most. But even then, 10 laps is a lot of laps to run in a qualifying session, right?
It is, but this is one of those circuits where the more laps you do, the more confident you'll start to feel around this place. And this is one of those circuits where confidence plays a massive part in how successful you are in qualifying and in the race as well. If you're nervous around this place, you're not going to do well at all, whether it's qualifying or especially in the race. I mean, we've seen so many times in league races and even in real world races as well here at Bathurst that you can't fear the walls around this place. You just have to drive. You have to carry the flow of the circuit. And, if you have an accident, you hit a wall, you have a bad time, you just got to try and clear your mind as quick as possible and get back into a rhythm. And, a rhythm is going to be the most important thing here. Like you said, 10 laps that they can go out and set, maybe 15 upwards towards that count if they're really committed. But it's going to be so difficult for people to get that number of laps out, especially if they're going to be running with some low trim fuel. Of course, we're on board with Gergo Panker at the moment in the 778 for the Kunos Racing team. And they're in the Aston Martin V12. We do have quite a few Aston Martin V12 Vantages across both of the splits. And Gergo Panker comes across the line. And he's going to be 1.6 seconds off of the pole time, which is currently set by William Hendrickson with a 2-minute 0.588. So a very good opening lap for William Hendrickson in the Mercedes.
Yeah, it's a blazing lap. A 2.58. I'm expecting these guys to get down into the low 59s. However, we see Darren King out here in the mid 2 minutes as well. Here's Amon Murphy for the Yas Heat Racing team, number 37. Also, kind of within that 2-minute range, but I would not be surprised to see these guys chip away at this, maybe get down about another second off of these times over the next 25 minutes. We are seeing a couple of these cars just kind of get a little sketchy over the mountain, and this is just like Ryan was saying, this track will beat you to death if you are not careful. If you touch a little bit of wall, you grab a little too much curb, you get a little sideways. This track is about as wide as your average Lamborghini, which we do have one of on the grid, by the way. And when it's about that wide across the mountain, you ain't got much room for error. But we are seeing Murphy here. He's going to take, it looks like, maybe a couple tenths off of that time. 3 tenths up as he gets out of the final corner here, loses just a touch, and he goes across the line, not quite able to pick up that provisional pole position. But I would not be surprised, as we're currently watching the Fordzilla team a few tenths up, I would not be surprised to see these guys dip into the mid 59s, possibly. But it is 30°C on this track as well, Ryan. So not quite optimal temperature. It's a little warm, just a little bit, and I think that might shave them off a little bit of that time as well. But Spires here doing pretty reasonable. 3 tenths up as he comes down the elbow. Ooh, he just lost it.
Yeah, Harry Spears losing time out of the elbow, and that's going to be one of our key corners to watch for in qualifying, and of course Superpole coming up after this session. The elbow is one of the most important corners on the track. If you get it right, you get a fantastic slingshot all the way down the mountain and down towards the chase. Get it wrong, you're going to be losing 5 tenths of a second at least down towards the end of the straight, maybe even more. If so some of these cars that are maybe not as straight line speed focused. And this is one of the amazing things about Bathurst, in my opinion, is that it's such an incredible track, and it's built around this kind of philosophy of you have to be careful, but you have to be brave at the same time. But it's so open to so many different types of cars. I mean, over the years of the Bathurst 12 Hour, they've had, I think, 7 different manufacturers win in 9 or 10 years of this race being run for GT3. And of course, that just shows how incredibly competitive GT3 is. But it also shows that this track doesn't just lean itself to one particular car, one particular manufacturer. And, we can see that throughout the grid. I mean, yes, there's a lot of Mercedes, there's quite a few Ferraris, but there's Bentleys as well, there's Hondas, there's a Lamborghini in there to boot, Audis. And, you're going to see that throughout the field, is that it's not like some of the other endurance races we've seen where 1 or 2 manufacturers tend to dominate the grid. This is a track that opens itself up to many different types of cars being competitive, because it has those high downforce sections over the top of the mountain, but it has those low downforce sections up and down the mountain that are so critical.
Yeah, it is. And something I'd like to point out as well, as we watch with Malinowski here for the Roundy's Pasta, of course, him racing with Random Call Sign, as well as Killian Ryan Meenan. He's about a half a tenth from the lead, however, not picking up any time on this lap so far. Hendrickson, however, that was in P1, up until about just a moment ago, he was about 3 tenths up on his lap time. He's just coming out of the elbow section right now down onto the Conrad straight. He ended up losing quite a bit of time, whether he got caught up in traffic or what. So he was approaching, dipping out a few more tenths. But we're seeing how close this qualifying is. I mean, look at this. I have to go all the way down to 22nd position, Bruno Cattin, to get down a second from the leader at the moment. And there's Darren King dumping over the skyline curve, just pushing him to the absolute limit, as it looks like a little bit of connection issue there, unfortunately, with I think the server just went down, boys. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan for a second.
So I can confirm that the server is still live, and I think we may have just had a bit of a technical issue on the broadcasting end. So I will keep you up to date with what is going on, and rest assured that Darren King's car did not fly off the edge of the mountain, and he is still running out on track. 5th place at the moment for Darren King in the 38 Fordzilla Mercedes. And it is still William Hendrickson that leads at the moment in qualifying, still with that 2 minute 0.588. No one able to dethrone him from that top spot in qualifying at the moment. In fact, if you look down the field, when eventually we do get those pictures back to you, you'll actually see that the top 7 are covered by 93 thousandths of a second. And to see 7 cars within 1/10 of a second is absolutely incredible. There is a bit more of a spaced out gap between the lower ends of the field. But then again, looking at 12th place all the way down to 20th, you've only got 2/10 of a second. So it's incredibly competitive here in qualifying. And of course, remember, the top 10 in this session will go through to Superpole. And then that will decide the top 10 for the race, happening in 2 weeks' time, 17th of October, live stream to go live at 1:30 p.m. or 13:30 BST. So we are back with live pictures. And you can see the 501 Forza Italia esports team. Of course, they're sitting in 13th place at the moment. They're going to be hoping to get a bit further up the field. But look at the names that we have here outside of the top 10. Joe McCauley, Samir Ibrahimi, Harry Conway, Ondrej Dedicek, Zahir Esser as well, a driver that I've become quite familiar with over the past couple of months. He's just outside the top 10 by about 1/10 of a second. So it's going to be incredibly interesting to see how this all develops. 18 minutes of the session remaining here.
Yeah, I apologize about that. My game crashed, and I think Nick's did as well. So I dipped down to check with the stewards really quick to make sure the servers are okay. Apologies. Life of a server admin. But Ryan, thank you for holding that down. But yeah, I mean, this is just incredibly close. I mean, we did pick up a little bit of time at the top, obviously, down into the 50. He was currently on a 58, and then dipped out of his lap there. Henderson did, and so we're still just not quite getting under that 2-minute mark, which is interesting. I expected these guys to get down into the 59s. So far, not quite getting there. However, the man we're on board with here, which is the 501 Ferrari, who's the first car that we had out to begin with at the top of the lap, you know, he's coming through the chase right now. Is he going to be able to pick up a few tenths? Because a few tenths means multiple positions in this case.
Well, someone who is definitely picking up multiple tenths is the Bentley behind him, the 194, the Racing Line Motorsport entry. Akos Getvan in that car at the moment, 3 tenths up, and he will improve. And he'll go up to 12th, so still just outside of the Superpole area. And of course, we can run you through some of the drivers just in the top 10 at the moment. William Hendrickson, of course, still leading the way, although he has slightly improved his lap time. It's a 2-minute 0.462. That's followed by the Orion Race Team entry of Matthias Egger in a Mercedes this time round, not the typical Lamborghini that we're used to seeing them in. Mikhail Moros in 3rd, Maciej Malinowski in 4th, Brandon Abraham at 5th, Darren King, Archie Clifford Roberts, Herman Murphy, Harry Spires, and then, of course, Leo Hirvonen rounding out the top 10 at the moment. But like we said, so close. And it looks like, at the moment, the top 10 split by just over a 1/4 of a second. So tight here for Superpole.
Yeah, so going to be very tight as we drop off pictures here for just a second. Apologies, Nick is just having a little bit of technical issue with his game today. We will keep you updated through RCI Radio, which is a favorite of Maya and Jesse Lee's if you've watched the Night Owl Championship at all. Currently, nobody actually up really on their laps. We've got back to the back of the field, Joe McCooley will be a few tenths up. Bruno Cadilli a few tenths up as well. And again, a few tenths really means a lot here. McCooley back in 23rd position at the moment. He's currently making his way through the mountain section, and he's up a couple tenths. If he can pick up a couple tenths, that's going to put him all the way up into the top 15 even. Maybe even farther up if he can get it going even more. I'm actually kind of surprised, Ryan, or maybe I should say not surprised with how quick these guys are. But I was expecting Joe McCooley to be quite a bit up the grid, and he's down in 25th position, which I really is just kind of back to, I think, talking about how quick this overall grid will be here. And I believe we are back live on pictures now. Apologies about that, guys. Just small technical issues, but we are back on here. Here's Hendrickson for the Griffax Racing Team. not currently up on his lap, but this is your leader so far in the qualifying. He did pick up a little bit of time on his last lap, went from a 2.588 to a 4.62 on that lap, just finished an out lap, and he's got 14 more minutes to bring that time back farther back down.
Yeah, but a car definitely worth keeping an eye on at the moment is the 4th place car of Malinowski, 2/10 up on his lap time at the moment, coming into the chase. 2/10 of a second would put him at the top of the standings for qualifying. Of course, doesn't matter too much right now, but he has lost some time coming out of the chase, comes into the final corner. Is he going to regain any of that time? No, he won't. And he's not going to improve on his lap time. Was 2/10 up, but of course in the last few corners, just to say missed out. But something I'm looking at right now, and it may just be that my timing has had a little bit of a failure. Are we looking
at Berrezzini, Ryan?
Berrezzini appears to be 0.8 of a second up on his time at the moment. Now,
yeah, I think it's bugged.
This is definitely a timing error, because we've encountered this at the past. I believe it was at Barcelona, wasn't it?
It was.
We encountered this. So Berrezzini, he might be up on his time, but he's definitely not 2.3 seconds up on his time. Or
if he is, he needs a ballast.
they put rocket fuel in that car, and yeah. So Berrezzini making his way down the circuit, and Ondrej Dedicek as well. Actually, he's just improved on his lap time, sent himself 11th for the 404 Connection Lost Racing team. That's a very good qualifying lap from Ondrej Dedicek, doing his team proud there, and so close.
Learning from James Parker, that man is.
He is, in fact, yeah, in the Endurance Championship, the Project Alien Aston Martin.
Yeah, it's good to see that come to fruition a little bit. Of course, Dedicek is a quick driver to begin with, but he's been learning from James Parker, and it's showing. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he's actually beating James Parker's team so far in the qualifying, as we see Samir Ibrahimi back in 21st position, which is not where I would expect a name such as Samir Ibrahimi to be. So we're seeing a couple of these guys just be pretty far back on the grid here, Ryan, that I am not expecting to be down here. Of course, they are running the Bentley. It doesn't have an amazing qualifying pace to that, that said, but the Bentley is so good during the race. You can take less fuel in it because it just doesn't seem to drink any fuel, even though it's called the boat, and the tires on that thing will last forever, so you can stay very consistent over a stint. I'm wondering if that's what they're suffering for right now.
Could entirely be the case. I mean, you've got to remember that they are qualifying for a 12-hour race. Your qualifying position it's going to be important, but it's not going to be the end of the world if you qualify down in 15th, 20th place. A lot can happen in 12 hours. And we've seen this. I mean, wasn't it the 6 hours of Barcelona that we had, where one of the cars had an accident really early on in the race, but they still came back to finish within the top 5, I believe it was. And of course, that's over the course of 6 hours. And it was the Orion race team, in fact, that got a penalty. And they only finished a couple of seconds behind the leader, despite that penalty as well. So, they were held back through a couple of mistakes that they made, and they still managed to come away with a good result. And that's only in half the amount of time that they'll have here at Bathurst. And of course, you have to remember, this is Mount Panorama. This is the most notorious track in ACC and in GT racing entirely, I would say. Maybe bar the Nordschleife.
To add to that as well, Ryan, they didn't even necessarily get a penalty at the end, because they also had a penalty early in the race as well. So they came all the way through the field after an early incident and getting a penalty from it. Came all the way through the field to finish in P2. Technically, they crossed the line in P1 as well. So coming through 2 incidents to make that up. And as you said, that's at Barcelona, not even necessarily at Bathurst here, where it's harder to overtake and just harder to take consistent to begin with. So I'm expecting really strong things out of that 126 car. I just noticed they just switched drivers as well. We've seen Berrezzini now taking a break, and we're jumping in with Mathis Egger in that 126. But however, right now, currently on board with Darren King, hopping over Skyline again, and you could just tell he is pushing to try and get down into these low 2-minute times, and he's jumping over Skyline. It's the second time we've seen him do that, and he's going to have to, kind of get that together a little bit. He's already in the Superpole, but it doesn't matter at this point. That top 10, once you're in that top 10, that order doesn't actually matter anymore. However, it doesn't matter to racing drivers. They still want to see their name at the top of the leaderboard, and it doesn't matter who's in front of them. If they're locked in, if I've already won the points, I don't care. I still want that position ahead of me, and that is what we're going to see all these guys do for the next 9.5 minutes. Edgar on his outlap here that we were just talking about, teammate of Berrezzini for the Orion race team, there he goes across to start his first hot lap, and we're going to see how this one goes for the Orion race team.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, you look at the likes of Darren King, and he's got to make up, well, not even a tenth of a second, has he, to put that car at the top of the qualifying order, and 75 thousandths of a second. I mean, it's impossible to measure that just at a glance with the human eye. I mean, you know, if you put 2 laps side by side, you practically won't notice the difference. You have to be very, very keen and have some pretty high perception to notice the difference there. But, you know, you think to yourself, 75 thousandths of a second, oh, that's nothing, that's easy. You can easily make that time up around here. And, I mean, it could just be that, you know, there's one corner here that he's been particularly difficult at and hasn't quite got that corner right today in qualifying. But that's the problem that you run into here, is that maybe there's a particular corner you're struggling with. Maybe you just can't put it together over the course of the lap. Maybe you get that corner right on a lap, but then you make a mistake somewhere else. It's all about, you know, what you can carry over the entire lap. And whilst that does seem quite obvious to a lot of people, it's a lot harder to, you know, understand and get your head around and actually put it into practice. As we can see, William Hendrickson has gone quicker yet again. It's a 2-minute 0.204 for the number 11 Mercedes.
Yeah, 204, and that makes, so I was just saying in chat, in fact, that we were within top 26, being within a second. That is now down to the top 17 due to this time. Egger does look like he's invalidated his lap at some point, as our timing board has a look like it is just bugged again. It's showing them 3.1 seconds up, which if they are, again, they've installed rocket fuel into this Mercedes, but that is just the timing screen not displaying us the correct information. So he's going to come across the line. That was a 2 minutes 0.738, and he's going to go ahead and pull over, head back to the pits. However, Malinowski back in P6 here, he was just 5 tenths up. He just lost a couple tenths, but he is coming down the back straight here, the Conrad straight, 3 tenths up, and that is going to be pretty close depending on how he gets through the chase here, on whether he can, that should easily slide him into P2 unless he really messes this up. But if he can pick up just a little bit more time, he is breaking into the chase there. He's now 4 tenths up, loses just a little bit coming out of the chase. Now in that high 3 tenths, we're going to see him come into the final corner. Lost another tenth there, but gaining it back. This is going to be so close. Malinowski going to come across the line. He hits the grass and loses all the time, but still gains enough to put him on the front row. Second place for Malinowski, and he had it. I think he was going to get it, Ryan, but he's got 6.5 more minutes here to do it. The problem is Hendrickson does as well, and he is still out on a hot lap.
Yeah, incredibly good lap there from Malinowski, and of course, so committed out of the final corner. Made a mistake coming into the chase last time around, not so this time, and of course finds himself in the top 2 here with just under 6 minutes of qualifying remaining. Of course, like you said, doesn't really matter once you get into that top 10, but of course, like you said, these guys, they'll want to finish as high up as possible, and it's a good way to gauge yourself for the Superpole, because remember, we do have that top 10, you know, Superpole shootout going on later after this session, and these guys, they're going to want to make sure that, you know, they've kind of done a bit of a Superpole run in a sense, where, you know, if you know you're in the top 10, you think you're safe, maybe it's time you start experimenting, you start testing, you start, you know, putting minimal amounts of fuel in the car, and you start seeing what it would be like. Try and replicate a Superpole condition in qualifying to prepare yourself, and I think that's what a lot of these guys are probably going to be doing at the moment.
I think so as well, and I am curious, however, as me and Ryan are just sitting here talking, Nick Setnick, of course, staring at the standing screen. Nick, I'm curious to ask you a question. Have you seen any trends with these guys coming across, you know, losing time in particular spaces or anything like this? What have you been noticing?
You know, so what's interesting is actually coming down the final straight, they seem to be losing a tenth or two going into the final corner at Murray's, which is just interesting to me. I mean, as we saw with that last lap that we had on screen, catching just a little bit of grass, I mean, he was up 2 tenths and then it just immediately lost it. When we're talking about tenths of seconds, little mistakes like that can just absolutely ruin the lap, and the back half of the track seems to be where they're losing the time, because I mean, if they're coming over the mountain and they've done really well up with the climb and they're up a few tenths and they can carry that through, but if they lose it in the last corner, I mean, it's all for naught. And Bathurst, as we've mentioned many times before and now, it's such a punishing track. I mean, like you can catch the wall just like that with Hendrickson still on camera here. You can hit the wall a little bit, and then that entire lap is wasted, and you got to go all the way back around, or even do another outlap. An outlap can even be punishing on Bathurst because it takes so long to get back around the track, especially with all this traffic. So I mean, it's a punishing track, and little mistakes like that will ruin it for you.
It will. However, Hendrickson here, a tenth up again here, Ryan. He's already almost 2.5 tenths up, coming out of the chase now, approaching Murray's corner. He lost that little bit of time, as Nick was saying. This is where they've been losing it right here, out of the chase into Murray's corner. However, he's rounding the last corner, flirting with that time, and he's not quite able to do it. That's a 2-minute 2:61 that he just posted. However, what we'd like to do is take an onboard lap with Hendrickson here and talk through this track. So, turn 1, hell corner as he comes down there, straight out onto the mountain straight. Gonna go past one of the Aston Martins here as he goes down the mountain straight. The cars get pretty quick here, not quite into top gear like they do for the Conrad straight, but we are gonna see him get up into 5th gear, brake really late at about 60-meter mark, come into Quarry Bend, and then approach the a very difficult corner here in the cutting. You've got this left-hander here that if you get a little loose, you can really overshoot the cutting right here and get up into the wall and cause yourself all sorts of problems. So coming out of the cutting, we go through Griffin's Mount, Reed Park, and Solomon Park. This is a very fast set of corners here. You're upshifting into 4th gear as you come through here, and about right here, he's going to start upshifting into 5th. You're doing about 120, 130 miles an hour through this section, through a very blind section of this corner. You can see him adjusting things on the dash, getting the TC down as he gets down into Skyline, chucks that thing in there as fast as possible, down through the dipper, and approaching the Forest Elbow now. You've got to be hard on the, or very easy on the brakes rather, getting into Skyline, or you can throw that thing down through the elbow. Currently not up or down on his time here as he gets out of the elbow, down through the Conrad straight here. This is going to be down to the chase. This is where all the speed comes. As Ryan mentioned earlier, getting a good run out of the elbow is really going to lose or win you the time down here. This is a good passing opportunity during the race. Hard break into the chase. Try to find as close to that 100-meter board as you can as you slide through here out into Murray's corner for the final. You want to brake at about 60 meters with this amount of fuel. Hard on the brakes, back into Murray's corner, get really early on the throttle without losing too much traction. And there's a lap at Bathurst. That's going to pick him up another 0.5 tenth as well, down to a 2-minute 1:86. Hendrickson just showing the strength of this Mercedes around this track, and you can see just how crazy this track can be. I mean, that's an onboard through there. I mean, you're doing 130 miles an hour over that mountain, Ryan. It can just, that tiniest mistake, and you are in the wall.
Yeah, this is a track that, you know, it rewards risks sometimes and punishes them most of the time, but you know, you really do have to take risks around here if, you know, you're going to get the most out of your lap time. And, you know, I think we've seen that today with Hendrickson and a lot of these other guys out there today, as we're looking at Joe McCauley for the nearly on-pace team. 11th for that car at the moment, just outside where they need to be for Superpole. I was having a look down the timing board whilst you were on that incredible coverage lap of the Mount Panorama circuit. The top 24 covered by an entire second here as qualifying officially comes to an end. The timer has hit 0. Everyone will be finishing their laps this time round, so this is it. It's do or die. Go big or go home for the final lap of qualifying.
And look at Malinowski, a couple tenths up. This is Joe McCauley we're on board with at the moment. He just lost his time coming out of the elbow. Malinowski, though, in the 2:11, currently up in P2, was a tenth or two up. Egger for that Orion Racing team, who, by the way, have dropped down to 5th place from 2nd, where they were at earlier, just showing how tight this grid is. These guys are they're trying to inch out every little tenth. We currently have 43 cars, that have joined the qualifying session out of, I believe, the 45 that we will have in total for the race. And here's Malinowski. He's going to approach the last corner. I do not think he's going to have the pace to pick up another position unless he is really chucking it through
Don't mean to interrupt you, Mike, but Joe McCauley's just put it into the top 10. He's gone 9th on the final lap of qualifying. He sets a lap to go 2 tenths quicker, and he puts the 8.99 into 9th provisionally. Getvan and Muthen seem to be the only drivers that can stop him. Getvan crosses the line. He's not going to stop him. So it's going to be down to the likes. Yeah, it is. And Malinowski has gone top by 15 thousandths of a second there. Muthen has pulled out of his lap. And it seems that is going to be the end of qualifying. Matthias Egger will cross the line for the Orion race team. He's going to stay 5th, though. And your top 10 for Superpole is going to be Malinowski, Hendrickson, Spears, Moros, Egger, Darren King, Eamon Murphy, Brandon Abraham, Joe McCauley, and Clifford Roberts.
So here's the thing, is even though these guys have done such a strong showing in the actual qualifying, now they've got to repeat it in the top 10 and do it in one lap. And this is going to be the true show of what your pace can be, I think. Do you go for a little bit of a safe lap? Do you risk it and go for it all? That's what we're going to find out. I do believe that we are going to go into standby mode here for just a couple moments on the stream, guys, as we push out to the Superpole server and get everybody ready. So we'll be back with you probably in about 5 to 10 minutes at the most for the Superpole session. Stick around. This should be, I'm going to call this exciting, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. So it's looking to be good. So we're going to have Superpole coming up shortly. Of course, we'll get all of that set up. And of course, we do have qualifying in Superpole going on for the 2nd server as well. That unfortunately not going to be live streamed, but they're going to be working through their Superpole fairly shortly as well. All right, welcome back, guys, and Superpole will be beginning shortly. We have, well, we did have our 10 teams in the server, and it seems like one of them has just had a bit of an issue connecting, so they'll be back in just a moment. But we are live here, and Superpole will be getting underway very, very shortly. So for those that are maybe a bit unsure as to what Superpole is exactly, if you've never seen it before, never heard it before, each car will get one flying lap out on track. So they'll get an out lap, a flying lap, and an in lap. And of course, that one flying lap will be the lap that decides where they start within the top 10. And of course, we have the 10 cars that finished in the top 10, and they will be exiting in reverse order to where they qualified in the first qualifying session. So that means that it'll be car number 3 that is going out on track first for Superpole. So once we move over to the Superpole session, they will be the first car out on track. So 1.7 seconds separated the front to the back of the field in the 30-minute qualifying session we held just earlier. And incredibly, incredibly tight. And I think it was only about half a second between the top 10 as well. So this is definitely going to be very, very close. And of course, this is where it's going to count the most. These guys have to go out and do one flying lap. You only get one chance at this. So you've got to make sure that you get it right. A couple of these guys just going out, getting some warm-up. Of course, they had to wait shortly while we got the server up, so they can go out and they get a bit of a warm-up. But once we move over to the session, they will be going out upon the order they have been given by race control. So we should be moving over towards the Superpole session momentarily. So I believe Mike Jones has now rejoined us in the commentary box.
I sure have, Ryan Gill. I was confirming with the race controllers that we have everything ready to go. It seems like we are, so we are standing by to get this Superpole session rolling. I apologize. We're actually waiting on me at the moment as I'm pulling up my broadcasting tool again, and then we will get going. So this should be an exciting session. I'm sure Ryan has been over the rules here, but yeah, one car at a time. We will follow each car, and I am hitting next right now. Here we go for car number 3. Will of course come out of the pits first. Clifford Roberts. This will be the BD Racing team, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That is correct. Archie Clifford Roberts was the man that set the lap that put this car 10th in qualifying. And as far as the timing board is telling us, he is going to be the man exiting for Superpole. So here he goes, and he makes his way out on track. And of course, in case you did miss it, you get an out lap, a flying lap, and an in lap. And of course, the flying lap is the one that will count. And there's always something a bit strange, isn't there, about Superpole when you're the guy required to go out first. You're going to be the first guy out on track to test these conditions for the Superpole session. And we've often seen that the guys coming out first, the first couple of guys that come out onto track, they have the most pressure on them, I feel. Because, you know, they've got no one to compare themselves to. So they've got to set the benchmark, whatever it is. And it could be that they go out and they set the pole position lap time that we, you know, could be seeing here for this Superpole session. But, you know, it's quite rare, and I would be very surprised if they do go out and set a pole position lap time right off the bat. But of course, they're in the top 10. They've got every right to be here, and they've got every chance of potentially starting on pole for the 12-hour race in 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks' time. Seems like it is so far away, but so close at the same time. You know, BD Racing here in the Audi, the only Audi, in fact, in our top 10. Of course, a lot of Mercedes on the grid for this Superpole session. Seems like with the new BOP that the Mercedes is doing really well here in the qualifying, at least, for Bathurst Mount Panorama. Of course, something just to note in chat, we do have 2 silver placards on your left side there. That means that these guys are Pro-Am drivers The rest of the drivers are pro. But we are going to see this man come down Murray's corner, warming up his tires a little bit, hard on the brakes in here to get as much temperature into the tires as possible. And Ryan Gill, would you like to take us around Mount Panorama Bathurst for our first Superpole lap?
I can do indeed, Mike. So Archie Clifford Roberts starts his lap into turn 1. Hell Corner had many different sponsored names over the course of its history, and Icebreak Hell Corner is the most recent of those. Makes his way up the mountain straight towards Quarry Bend. Of course, so quick up the mountain. Got to make sure that you keep the car well pinned towards the throttle, late on the brakes into Quarry Bend. Corner tightens up on the exit. Don't hit the wall on the outside line. Then, of course, working his way up towards the cutting. This corner, fantastic viewpoint here. And you've got to make sure that you don't hit the wall on the exit. Lots of walls to avoid here at Mount Panorama. Makes his way through Reed Park and towards Solman. As the Audi number 3, Archie Clifford Roberts, looking fairly clean right now, actually, and looking pretty competitive. Gets close and on the curb as he goes through Solman and now McPhillamy Park towards Skyline, the highest point of the circuit. And now he starts his descent through the S's and towards the Dipper. Got to be very careful in this corner, not lose the car, and make his way down towards the Forest Elbow. This corner going to be critical towards his lap time. How is he going to be on the exit? Doesn't touch the wall very nicely. Looking good here for the number 3 Audi on his first lap out. He has just 3 corners to go. Well, technically 4 if you include the kink, because he works his way down the Conrod straight. He's just got the kink, the chase, and Murray's corner left to go. So here he goes through the kink, nice and flat. Late on the brakes, around 120 meters here. Through the chase, looking very comfortable for the Audi. Rides the curb, doesn't touch the grass. 1 corner to go into Murray's. Late on the brakes, the number 3 Audi looking very good. Doesn't go too wide. The first lap of the Superpole session, it's a 2:01.071 from Clifford Roberts.
I mean, just a little on the slower side than we saw, obviously, in the main qualifying session, but I think that that's going to be perfectly fine, right? These guys, they only have 1 lap, and especially here at Bathurst, they're going to have to be careful, to make sure that they don't screw it up. Really curious to see how this ends up. Obviously, the BD Racing team, was 10th overall. Do they pick up a couple positions is the question. However, for now, I believe we are on car 899. Joe McCooley has indeed left the pit lane, is currently making his outlap across the top of the mountain for the nearly on-pace Mercedes. And of course, Joe McCooley, a very quick driver, again on his outlap here. So, Nick, obviously we saw a lot of Mercedes in the actual qualifying session do fantastic. Do we think they're going to do the same on the hot laps here?
I mean, if they're holding that kind of pace in the actual qualifying session, I would imagine the Mercedes would be the strong contender. As was mentioned, I mean, the current BOP in ACC seems to be favoring the Mercedes around Bathurst. They were setting consistent laps. I mean, you saw the top teams in qualifying consistently shaving off half a tenth or a full tenth at a time, just pushing those times up further and further on the leaderboard. And now you have 7 out of 10 in the Superpole are in the Mercedes currently. So this is Joe McCauley coming around the final corner to start his flying lap, and I am looking forward to see how he competes against the number 3 Audi.
And number 3 Audi, Joe McCooley, I would not be surprised to see this man be one of at least the top 5 as he's coming around first corner here, out of Hell Corner onto the mountain straight. Gonna try to sprint as his way down this, using the grunt of that Mercedes to get as much speed as possible coming out of the corner. That front engine car of the Mercedes, it drinks a lot of fuel, but it really throws down the power out of the corner and does it really well. Roberts back in the pit lane at this point, finished his cool down lap. Of course, the first lap being a 2:01.071. Here comes McCooley up to the cutting. He's going to get hard on the brakes there, keeping it nice and tidy through that section, and looking pretty reasonable on his lap here so far. Going to get up, shift himself up into 4th gear as he comes out of Griffin's Mount into Reed Park and Solman. Tries to keep it up off the curbs. The curb on that inside of that left-hander can really throw you. Same thing with the right one as you approach Skyline here. soft on the brakes in the Skyline, trying not to lose any traction over the little bump that happens there. Easy, easy, easy on the power through the elbow. Make sure you don't get sideways. The elbow, the dipper there. Trying to make sure that you don't lose any traction. It's very easy to do so. Same thing here at the elbow, though, as well. The dipper and the elbow both. If you get on the power just a little early, it can throw you straight off the track. Joe McCooley, so far, 1 minute, 32 seconds right now on his lap. 899 Mercedes nearly on pace. Gonna approach the chase to post our second lap for Superpole here. Hard on the brakes into the chase, trying to brake as late as possible. Keeps it nice and tidy into the corner. Good line off there. Touches the dirt just a touch. Not even enough to give it a second thought. He's going to break into Murray's corner, and I actually think this might be a high 2-minute lap if my calculations are correct. I'm going to say a 2-minute 0.7, and it's actually 2-minute 0.5. So Joe McCooley coming down, throwing down the gauntlet, making that mid 2-minute 0.5 lap there, not too far off the pace of the actual qualifying server. And it's going to be interesting. That's really interesting because, of course, you know, Ryan, we saw that it wasn't too far off that pace for the main qualifying, and now Abraham for the 999 Honda is going to have to see what he can do. This is THR Esports.
Yes, it is in the 999. Brandon Abraham and have to see what he can do in Superpole. And like you said, Mike, incredibly good lap from Joe McCauley, especially considering that was just, you know, it was a one-shot lap, and actually did better in Superpole than he did in the entire 30-minute qualifying session that we had just earlier. So Joe McCauley seems to be the right kind of guy for a Superpole environment. But this is Brandon Abraham into turn 1, and looks good so far. He wakes his way up the mountain. Of course, the Honda, one of the surprisingly unpopular picks. Haven't got that many of them racing here today. And,
I tried to talk my team into running it, and they flat refused.
It's an interesting car. I mean, this is a track that it goes well at. Don't get me wrong, it has very good straight line speed, and you know, this is a track that it goes well at, but it is a difficult car to get right. And you know, like we had a discussion off air just a couple of days ago, or maybe it was even yesterday, that you know, this car, even with a very, very good setup, can be difficult to get a handle of, and especially over the course of a 12-hour race if you're not confident with the car. And that is going to be the main point, is that these guys have to be confident with the car. Although Brandon Abraham looking very good at the moment on his lap, makes his way through the S's and down towards the dipper. The Honda looking good, close to the walls, but not touching them, which is the key point here. Makes his way towards the elbow, and how's his exit going to be now? Nice and close to the walls. Whew. Getting very, very friendly, but not too friendly with the walls, making his way down the mountain now. And the Honda, just 4 corners to go here. And it's looking very, very good for the THR Esports team. Of course, Elvin Smith will be in this car during the race as well, alongside Brandon Abraham. And so they go into the chase. Doesn't touch the inside curb for the first part of the corner. Dips a little bit on the grass for the second part of the chase. Looks very, very comfortable at the moment. Into Murray's corner for the final lap. And he's going to come across the line. And Brandon Abraham, he will go second. And it is a 2-minute 0.7 for the Honda.
You know, I just realized while he was coming through the chase section there, there's that one of the many famous corners at Nürburgring is called Miss Hit Miss. And I realize a lot of these cars coming through the chase are the hit miss miss, or hit miss hit, as they come through the chase with the apexes and curbs that they hit there. However, here is another car that I'm pretty excited to see how they can come in and hot lap. I believe this is Murphy, as it was showing Jordan Sherratt earlier. So Jordan Sherratt and Murphy for the Yas Heat 37 Ferrari. They actually signed up pretty late. They were trying to work out scheduling here, and now they are in the top 10 for qualifying as well. Of course, Jordan Sherratt from South Africa. I'm sure George and all the other South Africans in the chat pretty excited to see these guys out here for the Superpole event. But Murphy is going to be piloting this Ferrari for them. One of the few Ferraris we have on the grid as well. I'm kind of excited to see this. It's a very safe pick overall. The Ferrari is. It's one of my main cars that I drive. You know, it can really eat up the curbs, and just especially here at Bathurst, that can be some of the problem with the Honda. You touch the curbs in the Honda just the wrong way, and it will throw you right into the wall. The Ferrari does a little bit better at it, and we can see he's using the curbs there. He's touching that one. He's just going to clip this curb. He's going to clip that curb as well. Deep into Skyline here in 5th gear, downshifting to 4th, just tapping the brakes, hard on the brakes down into there. Now down to 2nd as he goes through the dipper here, really close to that wall. He might have lost just another 10th there, which could make a lot of a difference as he clipped the curb on the outside of the dipper there. Hard through the elbow, gets early on the power though. Looked like he upshifted at a really good position coming out of the elbow. This should give him a good run coming down the Conrad straight into the chase. And Murphy here so far on his lap at a 1:34.5 as he's approaching the chase. Got about 20 seconds or so left on this lap for the Yas Heat Racing Ferrari number 37. Coming through the chase, clips the corners there, nice on the apex. Gonna break into Murray's, hard on the brakes as late as possible. Looks like he broke about the 60-meter mark or so, which is very brave of him. Clips the curb on the exit, and not quite enough to post Joe McCooley. That will be a 2-minute .786 for Amon Murphy. Couple tenths back from Joe McCooley, and you know, that's going to be interesting for them. I'm not going to lie, Ryan. I was really expecting Murphy and Shootout to come down and really throw down a Superpole time. Still better than Clifford Roberts, granted, you know, but they are in the Pro-Am class, so I'm kind of excited to see a couple Pro-Am drivers and making it up to the Superpole. You know, some of these Pro-Am drivers are incredibly quick, just maybe not quite as consistently quick as some of these pro drivers like McCooley or Abraham or Murphy. But a man who is quick, pretty much no matter when, is Mr. Darren King for the Fordzilla 38 Mercedes.
Yep, Darren King, a name a lot of people will know very, very well. And if you don't know his name, you're going to start to learn his name very, very soon. He's pretty much everywhere around ACC at the moment. And of course, we're very glad to have him here with us tonight. And he's going to be racing with Sean Arnold in 2 weeks' time. Of course, Fordzilla have 2 cars competing in not just the Superpole, but also the race. And in fact, their second car is going to be out later in the Superpole, isn't it? It's the number 8 car, which I believe is going to be piloted by Harry Spears for Superpole. But Darren King looking fairly comfortable so far. And yeah, not too bad from him. Of course, a lot of Mercedes here in Superpole. We did see that they filled up about 70% of the top 10. And I have to say, that lap from Eamon Murphy in the Ferrari, quite respectable, in fact. It's a car that, you know, it doesn't really dominate at a lot of places. You see Darren King flirting with the wall up towards McPhillamy Park and now towards Skyline. And, you know, I've got to be honest, I think Murphy can be happy with that lap time, quite respectable, as Darren King tippy-toes through the dipper. And just trying to eke out as much time as possible. But this is where the Mercedes is going to earn most of its time. Out of the elbow and now down the mountain straight. And what can Darren King do?
Yeah, that's the question at this point, right? I mean, he's looking pretty quick. If we're looking at the current lap time, it's at a 1:36. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's just a touch slower than Joe McCooley was doing, but he's approaching the chase here. We're going to find out pretty shortly here, Ryan.
So Darren King comes out of the chase and towards Murray's corner to finish off his flying lap here for Superpole. The number 38, Mercedes by Darren King, a bit out of shape coming through the final corner, and it's going to put him 4th for the Superpole. It's a 2:01.017. And I have to be honest, I was expecting more out of Darren King.
I was as well. I was expecting at least a high 2 out of him, maybe a 2.8, but just not quite enough for Darren in this qualifying. You know, again, it's such a tricky track, right? I mean, you make just the slightest mistake and it can cost you a half a second, and it's so hard to pick up time. We watched that whole 30-minute qualifying session, and these guys are barely picking up tenths here and there, right? And losing it at other parts of the track. So pretty reasonable for him. But Matthias Egger, this is a man I'm kind of interested to see, as obviously we were talking about him earlier. Matthias Egger and Fulvio Verrazzini in that Lamborghini at our 6 Hours of Barcelona really put on a hell of a show, and I'm really curious to see how they can do here at Bathurst. Mount Panorama starting his Superpole lap, coming up to Hell Corner, hard on the brakes through the first corner, early on the power, touches the grass. I don't know if that maybe invalidated him there. He was very, very wide, trying to push as hard as he can out of Hell Corner, and I think that speaks to how this lap is going to look. He's shifting up into fifth, approaching the Quarry Bend right now. Going to get hard on the brakes as late as possible, almost down to that 50-meter mark before he's on the brakes. Early on the power, you can really, if you get that line right through Quarry Bend, you can really get early on the power and pick up like a half a second through there. Coming up through the cutting now, hard left-hander. Got that little kind of upwards dip that goes up into the corner coming out of it, and if you're not careful, it can really throw you out through the mountain section now. This is really where you can stay really stable, pick up a lot of time. You're seeing right there all the marks on the track already, from these guys getting a little loose there, with these qualifying setups. These guys are nuts, and cutting the front splitter cam. Look at this skyline. This is it's just a mountain. It's literally what it is, right? I'm in Bathurst, Mount Panorama, coming downhill like this at such a steep angle, and you can see it is not flat by any means left to right either. It is left, it is right, it is left, it is right. Coming out of the elbow, this is one of the few kind of flat surfaces on the track left to right wise, even if you're going up and down through the Conrad Straight. It is mostly stable, though if you let go of your wheel for a split second to grab a drink of water, you better hang on tight with your other hand, as your force feedback will go all over the place down here as well. It is a very bumpy track. Little bit will just absolutely unsettle you. Here he comes in through the chase. We're going to come through our helicopter camera monitoring him as he's going to approach Murray's Corner. Again, hard on the brakes. This lap actually looks pretty respectable. 58, 59, 2 minutes, and not quite enough, in fact, to get him up there, though still faster than Murphy and Darren King. And, I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm not going to complain about that.
No, I think it's a good lap time from the likes of Matthias Egger and the Orion race team, and if that does get them third place for the race, I think they'll be very, very happy with that. And of course, we've only really seen them in the Lamborghini, haven't we, for endurance events? So it's going to be interesting to see how they do in the Mercedes. But the next car coming to start its lap is Michael Ross in the MS Motorsport number 2 car. This is one of the Pro-Am entries that made its way into Superpole. And they're going to start their lap at the moment. Of course, their target is going to be to beat Clifford Roberts. They're going to want to start ahead and as the highest Pro-Am car on the grid. But of course, anything else is a bonus. And Michael Ross making his way up the hill at the moment towards Griffin Bend.
Yep, up through this first section, you can really, again, I feel like I keep saying this, but you can lose and gain so much time through every single section of this track. The cutting is a big one. It's a place that I struggle with. Lose a little bit of grip coming into the cutting, and there goes a second. Boom, out of your way instantaneously. Unfortunately, we don't get split times in this sim, so we can't quite compare the split times in relation to the other drivers to see how these guys are doing through the track, but we can see how tight Ross is getting here, coming through Skyline, almost clipping the two walls in and out, jumping over the curb as much as possible. And he's going to approach the elbow here, and this is really what it's going to be. You got to get a good launch out of here. You got to get a good run coming up the mountain. You got to get a good launch coming out of the elbow. The sooner you can upshift into 6th gear, as soon as you hit your rev limiter in 5th gear coming down, which should be about there-ish on the track. If he can get that upshift into 6th gear by picking up another mile or an hour or two coming out of the elbow, again, just picking up time, and those tenths, as we know from the qualifying session just a moment ago, how tense it can be. We were, what did we decide, Ryan? 1.7 seconds from first to last in like 40 some odd positions. A tenth is positions. Moroz is going to go sideways here, coming out of the final corner. The MS Motorsport number 2 gonna tap the wall. He manages to get across the line and post a lap. That was going to be a really fast lap for him, as look at that time posted. Still posts just 3/1000ths of a second behind that BD racing car, Ryan. That was going to be a heck of a lap.
There's definitely going to be a lap worthy of putting him well and truly in the fight for the top 5 here in Superpole. And, well, he would have definitely been the highest Pro-Am car on the starting grid. But that just shows you can do all the hard corners on this circuit, and you can get to the last one and throw it all away. And it's such a shame for Michael Ross, who was looking so good throughout that entire lap. Maybe could have even had a shot at putting that car on the front row of the grid, or definitely on the second row of the grid. So that's going to be a shame for him. But here is the second Fordzilla car in Superpole and the race, and it is driven by Harry Spears. So the number 8 Fordzilla Mercedes starts its flying lap. And of course, Harry Spears, a driver that I've had the pleasure of actually racing myself. I haven't had the pleasure of racing most of the guys that are in this Super Bowl session, but the likes of Harry Spears is fortunately one of the alien-type drivers that I have had the pleasure of racing against, and I can confirm he is very quick.
He is absolutely quick. I've seen him in a couple races. I personally have not seen him in overly amounts too much. But, you know, where he has been a very quick driver. And, I mean, anybody that we're going to see on camera here at Bathurst, I think that we could say that about. But there are some drivers who really are just, you know, absolutely much quicker even than that. And, you know, some of these guys like McCooley, like Berrezzini, and Egger, and even Darren King, you know, who struggled a little bit in this qualifying in comparison to these guys, are those drivers, right? Any drivers that you're going to see with a white number placard, for those not overly familiar with sim racing in general, we have what we do in real life racing, right? Which is Pro-Am, Silver, and Am. For our sim racers, we also have not necessarily a classification, but something we call alien drivers. These are the guys who are just absolutely beyond pro, that are just so much quicker than your pro class in general. That is what you're going to see with the white number placards, what we're going to call our pro drivers for this event. And of course, 8 out of the 10 of this Superpole here being in pro is just it just means that we're having these guys be so quick throughout this entire race. They're very consistent, they're very quick, and here comes Spears across the line, jumping up into 4th place. That beats Murphy and King, beating Murphy by only 0.03 of a second, Ryan.
Yeah, so close there, and well, it is going to be the likes of Harry Spears, who puts his car 4th on the grid, provisionally at least, as we do still have 2 cars left to run in this Superpole session, and this is one of them, the Randy's Pasta 211 car, and this is obviously occupied. This is obviously occupied by Malinowski, Killian Ryan-Meenan, and I believe a random call sign is also in this car, is he not?
That is correct. Yeah, random call sign will be filling the 3rd slot in this car. Malinowski, however, of the 3, if we're being honest, Killian, I know you. I saw you in the chat earlier, I believe. But let's be real, Malinowski is indeed one of the fastest drivers that is going to be on the server. Period, more or less, inside that Randy's Pasta team. So these guys did qualify on pole for the qualifying session. The 11 car had a little bit of a mechanical issue, has now rejoined the server, so they will, even though they qualified 2nd, they will be out on the track last after Malinowski here. But first, a lap with Malinowski coming in to Quarry's Bend here, and we're going to see what he can do. I'm expecting, I'm going to call it, Ryan. I'm calling front row.
Well, Mike Jones starting the predictions 2 weeks in advance for the race, and he's predicted that this car is going to start on the front row of the grid. So, of course, this car does now unfortunately suffer a rather dark fate in the next half a lap that it has to run. You know who to blame, and it's not Jesse Lee for once, because he's not actually here at all. Malinowski through McMurray Park. And Mike Jones has cursed the 211 out of a potential front row here at Bathurst, and that is going to put him to 10th place in Superpole, unless the 11, which is set to run next, can have, well, a worse lap. And Malinowski, like you said, one of the quicker drivers here, but mistakes can be made by anyone around this circuit. And that has just been proven right now.
I can't even look at my computer screen, Ryan. As I just said in chat, this is when I'm glad I'm a continent away from Killian Ryan Mean and a random call sign. They've got a long way to go to come beat me up for that one, and I wouldn't blame them if they did. Usually it is Jesse Lee who makes the cursing happen, but here today it would seem it is the other American gonna cause the problem. Do I even want to say this car's name, number? Do you just want to deal with this one completely, Ryan? I'll just mute myself.
We can do that if you like, Mike Jones. So the Griphax Engineering car will be the last car out for this Superpole session. So they are the last car with the chance to take pole position. And of course, this was one of the cars right up at the top of the grid in qualifying. But of course, all that means nothing if you can't get a clean lap around this circuit. So here we go then for the final lap of Superpole. William Hendrickson in the Griphax Engineering Mercedes number 11 into turn 1. And he's going to be hoping that he can put this car on pole position. Malinowski, who was one of the fastest drivers in the 30-minute qualifying session, he was one of the quickest, and he was going to be one of those guys that we were expecting to be on the front row, or at least within the top 4. That's not going to be the case. And now William Hendrickson, the target he has to beat, a 2-minute 0.546. Joe McCauley, early on in the session, throwing down the gauntlet. No one has got within a 10th of a second to that lap time. Malinowski might have been able to do it, but we'll never know, as he's set to start 10th at the moment. And Hendrickson now, is he going to make the same mistake that Malinowski made coming through McPhillamy Park? Nope, looks nice and clean through there, keeps it pinned, and now starts to make his descent over Skyline, now into the S's and towards the Dipper.
Yeah, coming out of the Dipper there. James Parker noticed, of course, in chat as well, he clipped the corner, or the curb coming into T2, may have lost just a little bit of time there. We will see what happens with this unnamed car that I dare not speak the name of until he crosses the line. However, one of their teammates in chat calling them out, saying if they don't post at least a 2-minute .3, they are out of the team. So if anybody curses this particular shaped car, then I am not the one who did it. That would be Ivan, but they are coming through the chase at the moment, going to approach Murray's Bend and hard on the brakes through here. And I don't think, looking at the time, that this is going to be a pole time, but this is 57.890. Okay, well, 2.0.3. William, I guess you get to stay in your team for the Griphax Engineering 11 Mercedes. Ivan, does that help? He made it for you.
So there you go then. William Hendrickson with the final lap of Superpole is going to be starting on pole position for the 12 hours of Bathurst. 2-minute 0.345. Incredible lap right at the end. And it's going to be a day of what ifs for Malinowski, but it's going to be a day of we did it for the Griphax Engineering team. They're starting exactly where they aim to start come the end of the qualifying session. And when they signed up for this race, but they'll have to wait 2 weeks until the full race to see if they can throw it to a race win after 12 hours of racing.
12 hours of racing. That's the thing here. 12 hours of Bathurst. You know, whether you qualify first or last. We have another team that did not make it today. Of course, in chat, a couple people mentioned about this. Jardier and Jimmy Broadbent. It doesn't really matter what you call Jimmer, right? He just works with any type of his name, Rangelbork or Jimmer or whatever. It works. Don't at me, chat. My name is Ryan Gill. Kidding. But yeah, an absolute fantastic Superpole here from these guys. Jardier and Broadbent were not able to qualify today for the Mintzilla team, as they will be doing a last to first challenge at the 12 Hours of Bathurst, and it's entirely possible they could make it. But here is your leaderboard. We have Hendrickson, McCooley, Abraham, Egger, Spears, Murphy, King, Roberts, Rose, and of course Malinowski in your top 10. And look at that purple sector as well. Hendrickson did really well popping off the purple sector, and he was 0.3 slower than McCooley was as well. He had more time to gain getting into that 59. But guys, that is our 12 Hours of Bathurst qualifying. Results will be posted up on the Discord. Of course, tune back in October 17th to see the actual race. And tune in tomorrow, McLaren Masters Cup Friday for the Endurance Championship. That's a heckin' exciting race as well. If you guys have not been here for the Friday Championship, absolutely bonkers racing so far. Ryan Gill, George Smith, and Jesse Lee, the absolute trio of commentators, bringing you the pictures for that. And guys, it's been an absolute pleasure bringing you guys this qualifying today. We will see you guys back for Bathurst on the 17th, and tune in tomorrow for McLaren Masters. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend.